Sorry, I didn't hear you come in. I was just reading, doing a little last minute research before I jump into today's topic. Hello and welcome back to Obscure Reference. I'm Patrick. I'll be your host today, and today I thought we'd take a little bit of a retrospective and take a look back at Christopher Nolan's filmography in preparation for Oppenheimer coming out this week. Um, I've just recently, I've to give a little background. I've not really been a Christopher Nolan guy. I've seen the Dark Knight trilogy. I've no, that's about it. I've seen Dunkirk and those movies, and that's it. So I decided I put myself up to the task of watching every single one of his directed movies. And so we'll go through all those here today. Now that I've seen all of them, I just finished Tenet this morning, so that's a little bit fresh. So that I don't think that's going to affect things too much. But without further ado, let's jump right into it. So, right off the gate, what am I going to be ranking and reviewing these on? Well, I will give major points to the vision. As you know, Nolan loves doing working with cool different concepts in some of his movies. Mainly like Inception, Interstellar, Memento, stuff like that. He also likes telling his stories in a non-linear fashion. Obviously, there are some outliers from that, mainly the Dark Knight trilogy. But I'll be looking at that. I'll be looking at the story being told and how much I'm able to connect and resonate with that. Um, Noticing Tenet is not the right spot, but I'll also be looking at the thinking of the cinematography and the music and just everything that goes into what makes a good movie good. Um, so I'll give a little bit of a synopsis of each movie as I go through them. I've got five tiers here. I'm not sure I'll use all of them, but we'll see as we go along. I've got a general idea of where I want to put most of these. So we'll start with Incredible. This is for movies that I will, if I can get it in 4K, watch it again multiple times. Uh, just no notes. Well, maybe some notes, but like I enjoy it too much that I just don't really care. Um, and yeah, it's just flawless. This is what cinema's all about. And then we have Below That Great. I enjoyed it. It was fun. I can, I see what we're going for here. I see the benefits of this, but there's some stuff that just keeps it from being top of the pack, if you know what I mean. So that'd be like a 4 out of 5 if we were to do like a scale. This third tier, I see the vision. That's more or less for movies that I think had a really good idea, had a really good vision. I just don't think they were able to execute completely on, or maybe they held back just a little bit. Probably won't watch again. This is for movies that I enjoyed, because let's be honest here, I don't think Christopher Nolan's made a bad movie yet. And after watching all these, I can safely say that. But that doesn't mean I'm gonna watch all these movies. I'm not gonna be rewatching these movies every year for the rest of my life, right? Like even my favorite of his, I'm not doing that. But like, the point is, there are some movies on here that I liked, I enjoyed well enough, but I will never go back, or probably won't go back. There's a chance maybe 10 years I might watch, movies that go in this tier again, but like that's for me in the future. And then No Thanks, which is probably not one I'll use super often, is just for a movie. It, it didn't do it for me, and so it's the worst of the worst. It's not, you know, I can see maybe one movie going in this tier, but like that's not very likely. Like honestly, like all these are really good. So um, that one I'm gonna be using sparingly. That being said, I don't know, but anyway, point is, all these movies are good. If the worst Christopher Nolan movie is still a really good movie and is worth your time watching if you've never seen it. So I'm just getting that out of the way right now. Also, my opinion, not yours. Don't get offended. Um, if I say, that this movie is better than the other, like this is just a tier list. This is just for fun. So I just thought this would be a fun little adventure for us to go on together as we go down Christopher Nolan's filmography. So with that, I think it's fair that we start at the beginning. We start with his first movie, his directorial debut, Following. Now, if you haven't seen this one, I wouldn't blame you. I honestly had to look it up and see if it was streaming anywhere just because I've never heard of it either. But this is his first movie. He made it on a shoestring of a shoestring budget. Like, this is, you want to talk about indie film? Like, you talk about uh, Clerks, the story behind that. It's a similar situation over here. Like, they filmed this over the course of what, like 6 months on the weekends? And they had to make sure every take was perfect, so they would only get one take, and then that would be it. There weren't multiple takes because they couldn't afford that much film. So the story behind this movie, to me at least, almost seems a little bit more interesting than the actual movie. It follows this young man. He's credited as a young man in the casting, as he picks up a habit of following people and just kind of observing, and the rabbit hole that that leads him down. Just also real quick before I go any further, there I will be touching on spoilers for movies where it is impossible to talk about the movie without talking about spoilers. Looking at you, Prestige. But anyway, the rabbit hole this young man goes down by following people ends up with him robbing people's houses, and he gets mixed up with some gang trouble. I did really like this movie. It's pretty brief. It's not super long compared to any of his other movies. It's like I'd have to double check, but it's not much more than an hour and a half, if that. That might even be shorter than that. But it's definitely like it's all black and white. It's very British. I honestly, I really, you can see the origins of what Christopher Nolan likes to do with the storytelling. A lot of it is told in a non-linear fashion. And they make it easy to navigate because they'll give characters like injuries or something so that when you jump back in time and they don't have those injuries, you can be like, oh, so we're going back to see how we got here. And it all comes full circle towards the end. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. I will be vague about this one because I'm not sure how many people have seen this, but it's the end is actually really cool. It's a really good twist, and it's it shows you just how good Nolan was this early on because like I said, indie film like completely, and it's really good. It is worth the time to watch like completely. Like if you don't like indie movies, maybe you might struggle to get through this, but at the same time, it's like really good. Uh, that being said, it is very much like he couldn't afford proper equipment. They had to shoot during daylight because they couldn't afford lighting. Um, it is really good. Like I said, there's not a bad movie in this batch, and I'm saying all of this because you can probably guess I'm going to put this pretty low. Um, but this is one I might watch in like 10, 15 years, if that. It is a good movie. There's some fun. There's the story behind this movie is super interesting, and I think that saves it for me really in a weird way. But um, I just really like the facts that you can see a lot of where Nolan comes from. Uh, I also think it's interesting that at least two of the main characters in this movie have cameo appearances in Batman Begins, and the main character showed up in Tenet just real briefly. So I really like that. There's there's a little bit of a connective tissue there. Uh, so yeah, I do really enjoy following, but I there's a flat chance that I watch that again anytime soon at the very least. Memento. This one is really good. It's hard to talk about this without getting into spoilers, but honestly, like I don't even think I need to because like just the premise of this movie alone is so fascinating. It's this guy who, if excuse me, I don't know what's going on here. It's this guy who his wife has been murdered, and he sustains a head injury where he can't make new memories. So he's constantly writing stuff down, constantly getting tattoos on himself with clues. And you start off, and I really love this because you start off on two different points in the story, right? You have one that starts kind of, you start at the end and you slowly work your way back, and that's all in color. And then you also start from the other side of the spectrum towards the beginning of the story and watch, and this is in black and white as that slowly moves towards the middle, and you see these 2 points converge, and that's when you're able to put the full picture together. So you might be thinking like, oh, it's a murder mystery, but we see him shoot the murder in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Like that doesn't seem interesting. Uh, but you go through it and you realize there's a lot more going on here. I think the performances in this movie are fantastic. Shout out to Carrie Ann Moss. She's great, in whatever she's in, but she's really fun in this. Uh, Same with I'm blanking on his name, but he was the traitor in the first Matrix movie. He's great in this. Same with I believe that's Guy Ritchie. He's good. He's really good. Um, I have to imagine that there are people out there who have the tattoos that he has just because this movie is really interesting and fun to watch. And by the end of it leaves you in a place where you're like, should I really have been rooting for him that entire time? Like this just kind of feels messed up, and it's it's so interesting to me just from a storytelling perspective. I think it's all shot fairly well. This is still like his second movie. Like we're not seeing like huge budget or whatever, but it's still really well put together for what it is. I really do firmly believe that this will be. I might switch these tiers up a little bit. I'll probably put this in I see the vision down here. You know what? We're gonna do this. Watch this. Teach in film school. Kind of perfect. Nope, that's too bad. Cinema. That's how you spell that. Eight. That. Love that. This will be. Oh wait, hold on. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Just cut it there. So, decided to change up the tier list a little bit, change the categories just a skosh because I wasn't feeling great with the categories. So instead, we now have Peak Cinema as number one. We have Incredible as number two, Great as three. I See the Vision at four, and Won't Watch Again as the bottom tier. As for how this switches where these movies go, it doesn't really change anything. I think Memento's great. Uh, Following I See the Vision, I love the story behind it. There we go. All right, Insomnia. Honestly, I know Christopher Nolan has a soft spot for this movie. And he thinks it's like one of his most underrated movies, and it is a good movie. It just didn't work for me. Like I see the vision behind it. There's some really good scenes in here. You have Al Pacino and Robin Williams as like co-conspirator, like antagonistic, but stuck in an alliance because we have to, or else we're both screwed. Is an interesting dynamic. They're in Alaska, which I just as a scenery, like it's always daylight. It's why they call it part of why they call it insomnia because it's never nighttime. Uh, it's just super interesting. Because like you think you know what you're getting into. You think this is a by the books murder mystery, but it takes a turn pretty quickly when Al Pacino shoots his partner cop, and all of a sudden he's hiding that, and Robin Williams is like, "I know what you did." He doesn't say it like that, but you know what I mean. Um, but if you haven't watched this one's definitely an underrated hit from Nolan. That being said, uh, I got bored during this movie. It's called Insomnia, and yeah, I found myself falling asleep at a couple of different points. It's a little. I think the pacing could have been a little tighter. It definitely isn't, you know, bad by any means. Like Robin Williams and Al Pacino both give really good performances. It's not a side of Robin Williams that you typically see. Uh, he is definitely a little bit unhinged and not really someone you want to be around. And I think that's really good acting from him. There, like I said, a couple of scenes, for one where Al Pacino's chasing Robin Williams through a sawmill and he falls underwater and all these logs are like blocking him from getting to the surface. Uh, just a lot of like really solid performances. It is a good movie, but I do not think it is one that I'll watch again. I again see the vision. I see the vision behind it. I see everything that's good about it. I just not for me. Probably won't watch that one again. Okay, now we got Batman Begins. Here we go. This is where we start hitting some of the highs here, right? So this came out when I was probably a little too young to see it in theaters, so I didn't get to see this one in when it hit the big screen. Uh, but man, going back and watching it later, like I've seen this movie a few times now. Just I'm a huge Batman fan. I know I like this movie a lot, so it's one I've gone back to a couple of times. It's really good. It holds up very well. I think it has a really good, interesting spin on his origin. Like obviously, his parents were shot in an alleyway after a play, like whatever. But having him train under the League of Shadows and having that come back and be the ultimate antagonist for this movie with Liam Neeson's Raj Al Ghul, super interesting because I completely forgot about that. I honestly thought Scarecrow was the main antagonist, and to be fair, Cillian Murphy's Scarecrow is a big part of this. Shout out to Cillian Murphy. He will be in a few of these movies. So I'll bring him up when I see him. But uh, yeah, he's a good job as Scarecrow. Is how I imagine him at the very least. I've not been super exposed to him outside of the Arkham games and now these movies. But he does a good job. We also are building out the cast with Gary Oldman as Jim Gordon. We have you know oh, I'm forgetting her name. She's not in the second one, but she plays Rachel. But she does a good job. Like the entire cast is just solid performance. The music is incredible. Like you listen to Hans Zimmer's score for this, like every track is named after a different type of bat. Like it, they went hard in this movie, and it's why we got two more of them. you know. Uh, that being said, I do really, really, really like it. I can't put it in peak cinema. I think what holds it back for me, it's good, but it's not peak. We're not there yet. We're close though. We're very close. All right, now let's talk about the Prestige. Oh boy. All right, so this is one of those movies that I watched and then checked the Rotten Tomatoes score for, and I was surprised. Not because it was higher than I thought it should be, but because it was the opposite. It was lower than I thought that it should be. I really love The Prestige. This was my first time watching it just a few weeks ago. I knew next to nothing about it outside of, well, okay, that's not true. I knew it was about magicians, and I knew there was some sort of twist towards the end that involved cloning. And in the back of my head, kind of was trying to forget that, but there was a point where I just started connecting dots. I'm like, wait, what if there was a twist here where maybe there's something else going on? Like, and I was just, pure conjecture. But like once I got to the end and everything's laid out on the table, it's like everything makes sense. This is one I'll be watching again multiple times for the rest of my life. Like this movie is so good. It's like 20th century, early 20th century magicians going at it, like messing with each other, but also like actually almost killing each other and trying to outperform the other while trying to perform the best magic trick. You have Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman that are just giving solid performances. You also have a young Scarlett Johansson. You also have Michael Caine coming back. So like this is almost what's her face? She plays uh, the lady in Iron Man 3 that's not Gwyneth Paltrow. And I'm forgetting her name, but she's also in this. She's fantastic. Uh, this movie is just so much fun. There's a lot of like clues laid out. It's a lot like The Sixth Sense, where like you can watch it the first time and miss all the clues, but then you go back knowing the twist a second time. You're like, oh, it all makes sense, and that's what this movie is. And you start off with that monologue from Michael Caine at the beginning, explaining what the prestige is, which is the reveal, the flourish of a magic trick that show you like exactly what happened. Not exactly what happened, but like showing you the trick without actually explaining it. And then you proceed to see Christopher Nolan do that exact thing over the course of the movie as he distracts you. He's not making you ask the right questions. It's the whole movie. I like to compare it to a magic trick, and I think it's just phenomenal. I really like this movie. I know there are issues with it. I know there are logical leaps you have to take towards the end, for sure. But like David Bowie as Nikola Tesla, like just saying, that sounds like peak cinema to me. That just sounds like peak cinema to me. Oof. All right, and none of these are locked in until we get to the end. I might shift some of these as we go further in. But right now, we're gonna talk about The Dark Knight because oh my gosh, like this movie is. It's just gonna be. I'm just gonna be gushing about this movie. What can't be said? What can be said about this movie that hasn't been already? Like Heath Ledger as the Joker, like Michael Caine, Christian Bale. Everyone in this movie is just on another level. Like the story here about you know fairness and luck and the chaos that comes with fairness. If you ask the Joker, like there's a lot of really solid like thematic elements to this movie and a lot of really good acting. And this story is just like I can I be honest with you. When I put these movies on, sometimes I get a little distracted and I'll go with my phone. For the Prestige, for Batman Begins, for The Dark Knight, especially The Dark Knight, I was glued to the screen. I just got caught in and just didn't stop watching until I finished it. Some of these took a couple of viewings, but this one I just watched all the way through and it's so tight. It's so good. And it's not a short movie. But man, by the time you get to the end of this movie and you hear Gordon giving his final speech, calling him the hero that Gotham needs, not the one that it deserves, and ending it on calling him Gotham's Dark Knight. Like, come on. If the music's playing, he's on his motorcycle. Like, there's nothing cool. This is one of the best movie endings, like, of these movies. I will put there. I will say that. So, if this isn't peak cinema, I don't know what is. I will put it ahead of The Prestige because while I love The Prestige, I don't think it's as good as The Dark Knight. Okay, so Inception. Hmm. This one's a little tricky because I did like it. I liked it a lot. I just had a hard time connecting to some of the characters. There's a lot of telling that Leonardo DiCaprio um, wants to get out of this life that he's chosen for himself and be with his kids. And there's a lot to unpack there, but like at the end of the movie, it still feels like we haven't learned all that much about him. Um, and kind of the same with the rest of the cast. But I mean, Ellen Page now, Elliot Page, she does a really good job. Also, this is an all-star cast. You want to talk about an ensemble cast? You have Tom Hardy, you got Leo, you got Elliot Page, you have Michael Caine is in it briefly. he he's in a lot of these movies, but Ken Watanabe's in this, and he's phenomenal. Just Marion Cotillard's also here. Like this is an all-star cast, and just the concepts and how it's presented here, like it's really good. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that's just like, of course, he would do this, Christopher Nolan, but like it adds to the overall package what this movie is and what it chooses to be. Um, and I just love that it takes concepts like it feels like a good Pixar movie like Inside Out, where it takes like intangible concepts and gives a way for the characters in the story to play with, while also still making it feel believable and reasonable. Uh, like how they wake them up by making them feel like they're falling, and who hasn't had that experience in real life? Like that's just brilliant. It's ingenious. Uh, so I think, yeah, this one's really good. Like I said, found myself not getting too attached to any of these characters. That that being said, once they go into the first layer of dreams, it's like not stop from there. Um, There's like three or four levels of action happening, and I think it's really brilliant how he's able to balance all of that. Um, so that being said, I might. Do I want that incredible? At the very least, it's going incredible. Like I think this is something they'll be studying in film schools. uh, so that being said, actually, yeah, no, I'm gonna put it in peak cinema. Like just from a technical standpoint, this movie is phenomenal. I'm gonna put it behind The Dark Knight just because I'm a little bit more attached to that movie and those characters. I think, and it's going ahead of The Prestige just because from a technical standpoint, it's incredible. Like there's no question. Uh, like that is absolutely one I'll rewatch, but it might take me a little bit to get back to that just because you know, it felt a little long to me. But that being said, once he gets to that very incredible third act, like it just doesn't give up, you know. Okay, The Dark Knight Rises. This one, understandably, is not a lot of people's favorite of the trilogy. This one's just fine, you know. There's a lot of really good stuff here. Uh, Rewatching it again, I was surprised just how much it feels good as the end cap of a trilogy. Obviously it couldn't happen, but I would have liked to have, maybe have the Joker show up for like a brief scene in the third one. Maybe, hearing that there were plans to maybe bring Harvey Dent and the Joker into this movie, it just makes me think what could have been. But at the same time, like what we got was still really good. Um, I think this shows, Gotham at its weakest, which you wouldn't think would be possible after you have it on the brink of destruction in Begins and The Dark Knight. But here we are. Uh, this one, there's almost too much going on in this movie, and it's kind of hard to follow. But at the same time, like once you start getting to that third act, it's like it's all going, it's all good. It's really entertaining at the very least. I think most of the characters are used very well. I'm still the way they use Marion Cotillard in this movie, it still doesn't feel great, especially when you find out that she's the kid who got out of the pit. That whole reveal, it's like, huh. It was cool the first time. I don't know. And Bane's a really good villain. I don't think we gave Tom Hardy enough credit. I know we all make fun of the voice and stuff, but like Tom Hardy owns that role and he makes it his own. So I am. Um, I don't know. I'm probably just gonna put this in the grade. Might even put it behind Memento. Yeah, because at the very least, Memento was interesting from a storytelling perspective, whereas The Dark Knight Rises, like, it's good. You see me make that face, but you get to the end of that movie and you see Michael Caine sitting down at a cafe in France, and he sees Christian Bale and Anne Hathaway, who's also really good in this movie, but like you just see him look at them and you see Christian Bale just nod to him. It's like tears every time. It just cannot be stopped. Every time I watch that movie, I'm crying at the end. Just the music, the way it's all shot, it's so good. Okay, let me drink some coffee. Yeah. Okay, three more movies to go. And honestly, that might be the hardest to rank on here. Interstellar is really good. That's also one I missed when it hit theaters. Um, but going back and watching it now, my viewing experience wasn't spectacular. My Wi-Fi was crapping the bed a little bit, and it was also around the Fourth of July, so a lot of fireworks going on. Um, but we run into for real. We started with The Dark Knight Rises. We had a little bit of a sound mixing issue there, but we continue that trend here. I think the music in this movie is phenomenal, but it's a little overpowering, especially when we're trying to listen to people talk. So right out the gate, like the sound design and the sound mixing in that, and that's not gonna be the last time I complain about that in these movies, but it's not ideal here. I think Matthew McConaughey is really good in this movie. I think if he didn't get an award for this movie, he probably should have. I don't know what he would have gone up against. So that's just me speaking out of my ass. But he does a really good job in this movie. You also have Anne Hathaway is back, and she's like the main partner of this for most of this movie, and she's also really good. I just knowing next to I know a few things like he would leave Earth and that his kids would grow up without him. So when you get to that point, like it's still hit. Like the music was playing, and you see the videos playing, and you see Casey Affleck explaining his life now with his wife and his kid, the kid that passed away, that they buried in the backyard with their grandfather, and it's like you see him crying, and you see the memes of it, but like it's a really good performance from Matthew McConaughey. I think the concepts presented in this movie are just so interesting. I really like how most of it is based off of theory or how like physics actually work, or some concepts and theories for that. It does, there's some points where it is a long movie. The pacing's not fantastic, but watching it, seeing the tech presented in this movie, seeing it felt a lot like what Starfield is going for, almost NASA punk. But to their credit, this is NASA that's being presented in the movie that Matthew McConaughey is going to space for, and it presents a really interesting like world and setting for where they are, where the Earth is. I don't think we use that nearly enough. It does become an interesting race against time almost towards the second half of this movie, and time's a huge like figure in this movie, and they use it to great effect. I really enjoyed this movie. I do think, just watching it, I kept getting the vibe like this is almost like our generation's 2001: A Space Odyssey. And granted, I think I put 2001 on a higher pedestal than I would ever put this movie on. But like the vision here, everything, like they had to come up with like a new way to represent what a black hole looks like, and you see that in this movie, and it's phenomenal. It looks so good. The performances are awesome. The science being backed up by actual facts to an extent is really fascinating. It does lose me a little bit towards the end when he's in that weird space in what is it, the fourth dimension or something. This was the part that really it didn't go over my head. I know exactly what Nolan was going for. He wanted to show that the love that a parent has for his kid spans across time and also gravity, but it, it that's another logical leap, and it's as much as I love the Prestige, that's probably my biggest holdback from that, right? So I think we get to the end, we see him come out of the black hole, which whatever. We see how humanity has evolved past Earth, and it's a good ending. It's a really good movie once you get past that point. Um, there's some questions and not questions. There's some questionable choices made toward like throughout the ending of this movie that kind of keep me from like full on sobbing. But like I got emotional during this movie. I think the tech presented during this movie, like the robots, like I love the robots in this movie. Like they're just like you think they're just like obelisks, but then they start like rolling and they look like they're moving asterisks. Like it's just so fun. This movie's great. I'm gonna put this in incredible ahead of Batman Begins. Like there's enough there that holds it back from being peak, but this is when I'll be watching when the mood strikes me. Like that's not when I'll be watching a lot, but it is really good. Okay, Dunkirk. So this is the only one outside of the Dark Knight trilogy that I had seen before I went through and watched all these again. Uh, and so I knew that I wasn't high on it before, but watching it again kind of gave me a new appreciation for it. Um, I can definitely see what Nolan's going for. The problem is you have three different stories playing out, and they're not necessarily at the same time, but they do all line up at the end of the movie, and it is really satisfying to see that happen. That being said, you're cutting back and forth between all of them frequently, like constantly switching back and forth, and so it's hard to get really attached to any of the characters. You don't really get to know a lot of them, really. I think it's fun having Harry Styles in here. He makes good music, and also he's an actor now, so I thought that was fun. But it was hard for me to get attached to any of the characters in this movie. I mean, Tom Hardy's in this movie, and I didn't even put that together until I got to the end of the movie. I'm like, is that Tom Hardy? Uh, but that being said, cinematography, the music, all phenomenal. You can the way the music is there, even between uh, jumping between different storylines, almost gives the feel of this all being one scene, one storyline, and it is truthfully, it's all the story of how they got all those soldiers off that beach, but um, it gives like a kinetic feel to this movie that it's like it's a nonstop film ride. This movie clocks in an hour 45 ish, which is pretty short for Nolan. Most of them are around 2 hours, 2.5 hours, right? But this one, it once it there are certain points where it just doesn't let up, and there are some points where it's like a war movie. Like stuff will happen, you'll go like ooh, and you just feel bad. It's like I can't even imagine. Like there's a point where after being trapped on the beach for a while, the guy on the poster whose name I'm forgetting because like all the characters really they have like simple like, names like Tim or Paul or whatever, right? But they just watch as a soldier just walks into the waves of the ocean and just disappears under the waves, and it's like, well, yeah, of course, it's dark, but like I can totally, I don't want to. They're in a dark spot, and it's kind of messed up, and there's a lot of that goes on in this movie, and you really get the feel of the dread and the terror that these soldiers went through, also like the hope that happens towards the end of this movie when everything comes together. Um, I think there are solid performances all around. I think Kenneth Branagh does a good job, good enough job. I shout out to Barry Keoghan. He's in this movie. He's the kid on the boat that gets hit and then falls down, dies on the boat, like the least dangerous spot in the entire movie, and he still dies. I don't know. He does good here. It's probably how he got his spot in journal, but like this movie's it's good. I went from being a hater of it to I appreciate it more. I think there are better World War II movies, better World War One movies, even like 1917 is phenomenal. If you haven't seen that, and that's a very similar concept of we're trying to get to objective A to objective B. And that's the only storyline really, but the way it's shot is phenomenal. Here it's same thing. Like they use a lot of this like World War II tech and actual like they try to keep it as historically accurate as possible, and you can tell like the effort is there, and some of these shots are so incredible. Like some of these aerial shots, you just watching these planes go around and getting aerial shots of the beach. My goodness, like the cinematography in this movie is on another level. uh, that being said, it's not really one I think I'll watch again. Well, that's not true. I might watch it again. If I can get a good setup going with a bigger screen and a better sound system, I can see myself watching this. Um, it's just it really isn't my cup of tea necessarily. Like it's good. I see the vision, but it's not what I'll be going back to super frequently. Okay, now we got his most recent movie, Tenet. This one has what's his name? John David Washington. He's as the main character, and this one is a very mixed bag for me. I think the premise is super interesting. The way things are inverted and moved backwards in time. That's such a fun thing to watch unfold on screen, especially with Christopher Nolan's take on it. Um, because like they filmed that stuff and then they just reversed it. And I'm sure that editing process was like insane. Uh, I don't, the story itself is pretty convoluted. And I know I say that after putting Inception like the top tier, but like even then they're like explaining things to you in a way that makes sense. Here it's just like, well, they say it and then they move on quickly, and it's like, okay, so we need to get the uranium, but wait, is it uranium? Oh, who are we talking to now? Oh, we're stealing this painting so we can talk to this lady, so we can talk to Kenneth Branagh, and it's like there's a lot of layers to this story, and not even that, it just moves quickly, and the concept that's presenting of inversion and the heat, the whole concept of that, like things moving backwards in time, it's a heady concept, and that's nothing new for Nolan, but like it's a lot to swallow in this movie. That being said, there are some sequences in this movie that are phenomenal and that are so cool to watch. Um, I really love the car chase. I also love the sequence when they're in the airport hangar and trying to find the painting, and they fight those two people that come out of the inversion chambers, who turns out is the main character. But um, there's really cool set pieces. The thing is, I don't feel too attached to any of the characters. Like I think Elizabeth Debicki's character is the one I feel sorry for the most. But even then, it's kind of infuriating seeing her be like, I want to kill Kenneth Branagh, the main characters, the protagonist is like, well, let's just wait because if you kill him, then you might screw everything up. And that's what almost ends up being the case. But Robert Pattinson's really cool in this movie too. He might be my favorite character in this, especially as you get towards the end and you find out exactly what he does and how he sacrifices himself, and also how he saved the protagonist at the beginning of the movie. Like it's just cool. I That ending with him is pretty sweet. It didn't make me tear up or anything, but it was like, this is really cool. Um, this one is probably one the cinematography is phenomenal. The IMAX shots that I have with the that I got on my disc are incredible. Um, like I said, none of the performances are great. I think the music's really cool. You can tell some of it's playing backwards, and there are cool like audio cues for when stuff is moving backwards. Um, Honestly, like it is a good movie. It's just not one I'll watch a whole lot, but it is probably one I'll go back to at some point. So probably won't put it, won't watch again. Real tempted to put it here. I probably won't. I might put it behind Dark Knight Rises. Hmm, this is tough. This is tough. Because I knew it would be. I finished the movie feeling pretty mid on it, hearing, and I've heard both sides of the story where people really love this movie or hate this movie. Not hate, but like didn't love it as much as they thought they would. Uh, let's see here. I'm gonna put. No, I'm gonna put it ahead of Dunkirk. I'm gonna put it in I See the Vision. Um, yeah. All right. So I forgot to keep up with the Killian Murphy watch, but he does show up in The Dark Knight. He's in Inception. I don't think he's in Interstellar, but he is in Dark Knight Rises and Dunkirk. So like, Killian Murphy's got a long. It's been a long time coming for him to be a leading man in a Nolan movie. I don't know if you count Batman Begins, but um, I'm excited to see him jump in as a more prominent role than he's had previously. He's a good actor. Let's see. If I were to change anything, honestly, because like here's where I'm torn. Here's where I'm torn. Right. I'm fine with this being here. There's an argument for me to put this following down here, but at the same time, I do like that movie quite a bit. And it's short enough where it doesn't overstay its welcome, so I might just leave that there. Um, let's see. These are both very solid. I'm good with leaving those there. And then the other one is The Prestige Interstellar. I could make an argument for Interstellar being in peak cinema. I'll probably keep it where it is because it is a longer movie and did find myself a little bored during it, just here and there. Whereas Prestige, it was entertaining enough that even the biggest flaws, which really is just a leap in logic you have to make towards the end of the movie, is negligible. I don't want to say negligible, but you know what I mean. Yeah, no, this is a no. I'm gonna stick with this. I'm gonna stick with this. This is my list, and this might change on any given day of the week, but I'm feeling pretty confident right now that I'll leave it here. That being said, we do have a new movie coming out this week. We will be watching and reviewing that on the channel, so stay tuned for that. We'll probably give you a little bit of a sneak peek. Might do a double header with that and Barbie, so just kind of feed off the Barbenheimer craze. But once we review that, I will put that on here. I've heard good things about it. I'm hearing a lot of good buzz and positive buzz about it. I'm gonna be seeing it in IMAX. So I'm really excited to watch it. Watching all of these, like I came from a place of thinking he's overrated. Like sure he made some good Batman movies, but Inception can't be that good. Interstellar's probably not that great. Didn't even know about the Prestige really, but then I watched all of it. And I'm like, no, this guy's got a good head on his shoulders. He knows and is passionate about movies. And is he a bit of a snob when it comes to that? Maybe, but it's hard to deny that he knows what he's doing. And I think the fact that all of these movies can be considered a good movie is a testament to that. So, that being said, this is my tier list. We'll be back next week reviewing Oppenheimer and Barbie. I'll be putting Oppenheimer on this list once we review it, and yeah, so it'll be a good time. Stay tuned for that. Obviously, catch our streams Monday, Thursday. Um, yeah, this is a good list. I'm really excited for Oppenheimer. Yeah. So with that being said, this has been Patrick with Obscure Reference. Thank you for tuning in. Stick around for our reviews coming up, and yeah, I'll talk to you later.